I guess in my 52-year railroad career, I have walked to the moon and back on railroad platforms just like this in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And I've come to know there are a lot of untold stories and even a few secrets out there involving the railroad industry. Please join us and subscribe so we can continue to bring you those untold stories and even a few secrets from America's railroad past.
All aboard! Highball it, Eagle!
Have you heard the travel news about the Eagle Way? To your destination happening every day. The Texas Eagle is clicking on the rail. From the Windy City to the Alamo, meet you at the station, come on, let's go. People get ready and catch the wave. Catch the wave, the Texas Eagle Way. Through the heart of the nation of traveling.
Folks, welcome again to the continuing podcast with the inimitable Mr. Mark S. Kane, former president of Amtrak Intercity. We're going to begin part 3 of his very vital historical summation. And as a brief footnote, Mr. Kane has very graciously agreed to come back and do a part 4 for any questions, comments, or concerns you might have about parts 1, 2, and 3. So be sure and include them in the comments section of the YouTube podcast or on whatever platform you're watching it, so that we can get these questions to Mr. Kane for your satisfaction. And sir, I'm going to turn this over to you. You've also very wisely said you're going to do a brief synopsis of where we left off in part 2.
Sure. Okay, where we left off is that I had made a presentation to Amtrak's board of directors. That was in July of 1996 about basically a restructuring of the intercity business unit operations. And again, intercity covers everything between the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. So why don't we go to that?
Okay, and may I say, I think I don't want to misquote you, but what you gave us in part 2 was the same presentation you gave to Amtrak's board of directors, and only about 30 people in all of humanity have ever seen that presentation until now.
Yeah, that's right. Even that's outside of those on the intercity staff, but yeah, it was limited to the board and then a few people in Washington, D.C., and that was it. That's correct. Okay. So again, the summary of those actions that we had laid out, if we had been able to implement them on October 19th, in compliance with that 90-day notification rule, assuming we would announce that on August 19th, we figure we would have to wait a while before actually announcing these changes.
Which did happen, did it not?
Yes, we announced them in August, right? Not in July, because I'll give you information a little bit, there's a lot of blowback, right, when laid this out. But that would have resulted, we believed, in a $49.1 million improvement in Amtrak's bottom line for fiscal year 1997, which started October 1st of 1996. If we were told we had to delay until January 1st, the savings opportunities related to that bottom line improvement opportunities were $38.9 million. There would have been some offsets, we thought, from that C2 labor protection that Griff, you explained to everybody what that meant. The labor protection related to discontinuances of operations. But yet we still had an $87 million gap that we had to fill. And we knew that if the cardinal would be forced on us, we'd have to run it no matter what, then that's going to reduce these savings opportunities even more. So the map of Amtrak intercity operations that we were proposing would have looked like this. And you would have seen a significant reduction of lines in the red. You would have the city of New Orleans and the Sunset being the only trains in the red. No trains in the green, meaning an operating ratio of less than 1, meaning that it costs you less than $1 to generate $1 revenue. Mostly in the yellow, and then we had the chief, and then the state-supported trains from Illinois and Missouri in this area here, they were in the 1-to-2 operating ratio range, as well as the auto train, and one of our Eastern trains was in the blue here, also the 1-to-2 operating ratio with the state subsidy, as you can see, like here between Charlotte and Raleigh. Okay, so what were the next steps then? We needed the board to approve the route and service actions. We had to continue to refine the route and service actions, pursue and quantify additional actions that were laid out in the presentation, because there are a lot of other things that we said we would like to pursue, which in the interest of time, I've not laid out for everybody here. The total presentation was, over like 45 pages or so. And I went into more detail about all these after we got past page 25 here. And then I laid out some specific blocking and tackling safety and service related initiatives we wanted to pursue also. So this is what the map was that was actually in the timetable that came out, because it came out after we got approval from the board to pursue these initiatives. We had to produce a timetable, not knowing whether or not any of these trains that we proposed to eliminate or reduce would actually be saved. So this is actually.
May I ask a question, sir,
Yes, sir.
and add a footnote?
Mm-hmm.
The question is, I'm presuming, without being able to read the fine print here, I'm presuming the Dallas-Houston line was that a dedicated throughway bus, or was that just Greyhound interline agreement bus?
That was a Amtrak throughway bus service. That's down here in the legend down here.
Okay.
And that would have connected Dallas to the Sunset.
And that would have been a dedicated Amtrak throughway service. I
believe so, but honestly, the fog of time, I just don't recall specifically.
No, I guess where I'm going here, there is no presumption, and I'm certainly asking, not because I don't know the answer. There's no presumption here that an Amtrak ticket office at Dallas would have remained fully staffed and intact for a throughway bus operation.
I doubt it.
Got it.
I doubt it.
And the footnote is, yes, not only is that a very valuable Amtrak national timetable, because it was printed and distributed to the public, but the Texas Eagle, the Desert Wind, and the Pioneer, I don't think the Cardinal ever was. You can certainly verify, but those three tanks.
The Cardinal was still there. I cut it off. Because to make it fit the screen. The Cardinal.
Those three trains were taken out of the reservation system.
They were, as well as the Boston to Albany section of the Lakeshore Limited was taken out also. So I think what you're leading up to is that put a major hickey on us, in that we were in a limbo state here. Was this going to, continue to exist or not? We were in limbo. So we could not sell any capacity on these trains without the knowledge that they would be there. Okay.
The actual, I don't want to misremember this. Wasn't the actual termination date, didn't it end up being in November? Isn't that what the discontinuances notice said? I think it did. I think
yeah, let me go into that. I can go into that specifically. So here's the blowback. Okay. This created a firestorm when we said this is what, and I say what we wanted to do. I have to couch that term want. We didn't want to do any of this. We were in a situation where if you continue to do the same thing, don't expect different results, right? We had to change the nature of which we conducted the business. That was critical. So these are steps that we said would be the least painful of many that we could have taken to try to fill this budget gap on our glide path to becoming free of operating subsidy by the year 2000. Okay. So immediately there was pushback. We announced this in August, and I forget the exact date. I have it somewhere, but I don't remember the exact date. But, there was a lot of, pushback between then and that date. And finally they said, okay, yeah, all right, we have to do this, because we had the 90 days notification we had to live with. And every day that we delayed put us farther and farther away from being able to hit fill our budget gap. So,
ladies and gentlemen, if I might make a brief aside, Mr. Kane has been gracious enough to verify. I was in Washington, D.C. on Amtrak company business, and Mr. Kane very kindly took me to lunch the third week in July, and he did verify. I told him this story. I said, on my return to Texas, I told my traveling companions, I said, I don't know what's up here, but something major is up. And I told him I based that upon, I kept asking him about some future things on the Texas Eagle, which could be implemented and which locals down on our route were hoping to see. And I wasn't getting any response whatsoever about anything about the Texas Eagle about 1997 or 1998. So I just wanted to thank you for affirming that my gut level was right. You couldn't say anything. You'd have been you were all sworn to secrecy.
yeah,
So,
we were, that what they call radio silence or whatever.
radio side, yes, sir.
Yeah, we were in that state, and that was tough for us, because there were a number of people within Amtrak Intercity who knew all about this, and we were all sworn to secrecy. We can't do anything with this until we get that formal approval from the board that, okay, you can go. All right. So, and by the way, our lunch was, I think, about a week after that presentation to the board.
Right.
It was a relative, and that award, I think, was because you got like an Employee of the Year award or whatever.
Well, thank you. You're kind. That's correct. But the important thing, yes, and I'm very humbled by the fact that I did. But I came back to Texas with that award in hand, but also a real uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Understood. Right. Okay. So to give you an idea of the kind of blowback that we were getting, and it was from everywhere, on September 3rd, one of our Amtrak board members, Dan Collins, who was a representative of the United Transportation Union on the board, because we had to have a union rep. According to our statute, we had to have our union rep.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, for those, because so many of our viewers knew him well, Mr. Collins replaced our own beloved Charles Luna, as the labor representative on the board, as Mr. Luna had passed away in 1992.
Yep. So he sent a letter to Marshall Mayor Audrey Carroll, and he said in that letter, quote unquote, he would absolutely oppose the intercity route and service actions. And it wasn't just that related to the Texas Eagle, it was related to everything.
Well, now, wait, question. This is very vital to us. Why would Mr. Collins choose Marshall, Texas Mayor Audrey Carroll to write the letter to?
Because she sent a letter to the Amtrak board saying, please resist.
Ah.
Right. So he sent a letter back to her, copied to Tom Downs and copied to me, saying that he's, basically it'll be his dying breath before he'll support these actions, which I respected. I understand. He didn't want to see any of the UTU members lose their jobs. He was a spokesperson for all Amtrak employees on the board. He didn't want to see anybody lose their jobs. I didn't want to see anybody lose their jobs. But it was one of those cases where the patient has several limbs with gangrene on it, basically. It was dying. We didn't come up with this notion of being free of operating subsidy by the year 2000. Those that forced that upon Amtrak, had to understand that we have to live within the rules that they set for us. We don't make the rules. We just play the game, to use an adage it's used elsewhere. So, that's the kind of blowback even you're getting with the board after the overall board has approved it. All right. September 10th, there was a Senate hearing at which Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison was at, as well as Senator Wyden from Oregon. He was affected by the Eagle. we had a senator from Arkansas on there who was affected. There were, at least 20 senators in that hearing. And Senator Hutchison said, why eliminate the Eagle? Why not run a daily Eagle? She said that she got word that the Eagle was being cannibalized in Chicago. And then she was saying, why not look at other route options? Can't you route the Eagle a different way so it generates more revenue? And then she says, you know what? I'm going to right now, at this moment, I'm going to call in the General Accounting Office to start an immediate investigation into the way Amtrak costs its operations, because this doesn't make sense that the Eagle would be picked to go away. Well, all right, that was the tone in the Senate hearing. Okay, September 12th. This is 2 days.
Hold right there on September.
September 10th. Okay.
Did you have any knowledge when in the 21st century, when we took over literally autonomous control of revenue management of the Texas Eagle down here on this end, we discovered that there were allocated costs that had been made to the Texas Eagle that were totally unrelated to the Texas Eagle. And we got, for example, did you know none of the Longview, Houston, Galveston throughway bus revenue got attributed to the train? It went somewhere. We got some of that corrected. So my question to you is, in 1996, did you have any suspicions that there may be allocations to trains that didn't belong there? Was there any?
I didn't have suspicions. I had concerns, but I had been told by Betsy Reveal, who was the chief financial officer of Amtrak at that time, was before Al Altschul came, which he came also when I was there. But she was saying we had the best that Amtrak ever had at getting the costs identified right at the train level. It was the best tools that Amtrak had ever had. And I didn't have time to kind of like sit back and pontificate about it, or say, maybe we should spend a year and take a hard look and make sure that all these accounting systems are as accurate as they could be.
You didn't have a year.
By analysis, didn't have a year. Right. We're talking about months, basically. When you don't have enough money, what are you going to do? What happens if you can't meet payroll? It was a serious situation. At least they told me it was serious, and I bought it. So 2 days after that Senate hearing, in which Amtrak got basically reamed out, okay, then September 12th, this is what the status was of Amtrak's 1997 budget request. We requested $1.066 billion of Congress administration for fiscal year 1997, 1.066 million. So we're making all these plans. We still don't know how much money we're going to get, by the way. All right. We had to go based on what we think we might get. The administration requested $918.5 million. That was like $150 million less than what we requested. The Senate recommendation was $872 million. All right. So there's another $50 million less than the administration. Now we're almost $200 million less than our request in order to keep that Amtrak network operating. The House of Representatives, which at that time was under Newt Gingrich, remember that? The House had totally turned over in 1995 from Democratic to Republican control. And Gingrich said that, you know what, we're going to balance this budget.
You were not in his contract for America.
No. Nope, we were not.
Question. Take us behind the scenes, please.
Before we get there, let me give you the number.
Yes, sir, please.
The House recommended was $542 million. That was about half of what Amtrak requested. $542 million. That was $300 million less than, $330 million less than the Senate requested. So here we're trying to plan for the next year, and we're making all these assumptions, and our assumptions were based on closer to getting $1.066 billion. We were closer to the administration number than the Senate number, and certainly not at the House number, right? On how much money we're going to get. And we're trying to plan this network. All right. And that's 2 days after we just got reamed out on the Senate hearing about being irresponsible stewards and all this kind of stuff. How do you run a business where you can't plan from one year to the next? We're making long-term decisions here on less than a short-term budget. So go ahead, Griff, with your question.
Question about that Senate hearing. Take us behind the scenes, please. I'm positive Mr. Downs would have been at that Senate hearing, and I'm going to guess you accompanied him. You were in that room.
I was there.
Hey.
Tim Gillespie, who was the head of government affairs for Amtrak, was there also. Yes. And I don't know if Betsy was there. I forget. Betsy revealed.
I think she was. I think that if my memory serves me. But my question is, take us behind the scenes to the real human interest story here. Did y'all go back to headquarters and just close the office door and go, "Oh my God, this is what did you do? How did you handle it behind the scenes?"
That was my first Senate hearing. That was the first time I had been at a Senate hearing like that. And my reaction was, this is nuts. How do you run a business like this? And, Tom Downs and Tim Gillespie, they were used to this. And he just kind of said, well, that's just how the process works. They say you may like to eat sausage, but don't watch it being made.
Right.
That was their response. So they're kind of, I'm thinking, holy crap, there's no hope here. And they're just saying, well, there might not be, but it's too soon to close the door of hope yet. So they were educating me on how sausage got made in Washington, D.C. So, like among the people in that room were Ron Wyden. He wanted the Pioneer. And at that hearing, he's saying, we need that Pioneer because if there's a snowstorm in Western Oregon, how does grandma get to the doctor? Right. And I'm just thinking, yeah, but my gosh, that train's losing over $10 million a year. Why don't we just hire grandma a helicopter and have it on standby for her? We can run her to the doctor in case there's a blizzard and still save a ton of money. And then Senator John Breaux, he was upset because we were going to cut off the Gulf Shore train, the Gulf Shore Limited between New Orleans and Mobile, which was only running on a demonstration basis.
Right.
And it was only supposed to run for 3 months. And if they didn't come up with money for it, it was supposed to go away. Well, they never came up with money for it. The train still ran because of political pressure. So Senator Breaux called me into his office. I had to go meet with him in his office. And he says, tell me about what I can do to help you out. And I said, well, Senator, here are the facts. And I laid out the numbers. And I said, 1 and 1 does not equal 2 here. We need your help to get to 2. And he says, well, like what specifically can I do to help? And I says, well, other than helping us to get a budget appropriation that's closer to what we need to run this network, and don't presume that we're a bunch of, blazing idiots here, and imprudent stewards of the money, because we're not. But I said, one thing we need is tort reform. He says, tort reform? What are you talking about? And I said, well, for example, if we have a grade crossing accident, we end up having to pay, through the court system, an incredible amount of money for services that are losing us money, right? For incidents that happen, services losing money. He says, what does that have to do with my area? And I said, well, Senator Breaux, I've looked at it. In your state of Louisiana, where the Sunset Limited runs, we have the highest incidence of grade crossing accidents in our whole network. And I said, we were just going through then the settlement of a grade crossing accident in Gary, Indiana, where Amtrak had to pay, I think it was $1.6 million at a grade crossing accident. I said, Senator Breaux, the operating ratio on this Gulf Shore Limited is 10. It costs us $10 to generate $1 revenue. We can't afford to pay $1.6 million for a train whose revenue is $200,000 a year. And it has an operating ratio of 10. And that grade crossing accident is not factored into that operating ratio number. He says, so you're telling me you need to have tort reform then so that those, the claims lawyers don't get all over you? And I said, absolutely. We need relief. And he says, well, I'm not sure I can help you with that. And the meeting ended. And I go, what was that all about to Tim Gillespie? He says, don't you know, Senator Breaux is a tort lawyer. Oh, yeah, right. More than 60% of the senators and congressmen were lawyers. I go, I should have known better. And he says, no, Tim says, no, you did the right thing. You told him the facts of life. we have to tell the truth. And we had a motto, at Amtrak. You remember this, Griff? It was tell the truth even if it hurts.
I do remember that.
Remember that? So I was doing that. I made enemies doing that, telling the truth. But I was saying, look, I'm not in this for personal financial gain. I'm trying to do what's best for our customers, our employees, and our shareholders. That's it. That's my motivation here. So that's some of the insides of what happened around that, that Senate hearing. How's that?
That's wonderful. It begs the question, if you know or not, since you were proposing to eliminate service to the home state of the current sitting president of the United States, was he personally noted? How was that handled?
It didn't seem to ruffle a feather for some reason or other. He just didn't seem to be engaged with that train. No.
Okay, but did Amtrak send an emissary over? I mean, was this
No.
done?
I mean, I think Tom Downs tried to talk to him to get his support, but Amtrak wasn't high on his radar list. He had other things going on with, Monica and stuff like that. Amtrak it was important in the Department of Transportation. It was important in the FRA and all that. But and Rodney Slater was the secretary of the DOT at the time. Even Rodney Slater didn't personally get involved a lot with what we had going on. It was Mort Downey, who was his assistant, and Jolene Malatoris, who was the head of the FRA. They were both very, very engaged, and frankly, very supportive in general. But I'm going to get to a point here in a little bit, talk about, that support. Move on.
Last question on this part.
We're going to end up with we're going to part 4 and part 5 here.
we are. I'll try to minimize my questions.
That's all right.
Sir, is it true, because we've all heard this anecdotally, is it true that do you have knowledge when Mr. Downs called Texas Governor George W. Bush in Austin and told him of this eventuality that was coming, that Governor Bush said, I didn't even know we had a train between Texarkana and Summit?
I was going to get to that when I was going to get to that when I talked about the Eagle, but I'll tell you now. Yeah, Tom Downs got through to George Bush and said, Governor, we really need your help to save the Texas Eagle. And
so he was asked to help save it. Okay.
Yeah, we need your help to help save the Texas Eagle. And according to what Tom said, Governor Bush says, well, Tom, I didn't even know we had a bird named the Texas Eagle that was on the endangered species list. And Tom said, well, Governor, I'm talking about the train, Amtrak's Texas Eagle. And he says, oh, well, what's the deal with that, kind of? And he explained it to him. And he says, well, okay, well, I'll think about it, kind of a deal. He wasn't a strong proponent of saving the train, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the point is that, Tom said to me, gosh, he mixed up our train with a bird on an endangered species list, of which there wasn't such a thing. The bald eagle was on the endangered species list at the time. So that's what, it got conflated.
And, Vice President Gore later did the same thing. So we mixed the train up with the bird. And so, so we had a governor. We have a governor of one state and the president of another, both of whom were really not engaged in what the emergency was here.
Yeah. See, to us, it was an emergency. To them, there were other issues that were, much bigger emergencies. All right. Sure. We were kind of like noise in the background.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I told you about the status on September 12th then of our subsidy request versus what the recommendations were from the bodies that would control it. So to make a long story short, on October 14th of 1996, after we had announced that these changes were going to happen, Congress passed a continuing resolution. I call it a CR, which forced the continuation of the Cardinal indefinitely. Senator Byrd would fly over, West Virginia as long as he flew over the Capitol, right? So that would continue. The Senator Breaux got his Gulf Coast Limited continued till March 31st of 1997, and the Texas Eagle, the Pioneer, and the Desert Wind would be continued till May 10th of 1987. Now, the continuing resolution, that CR, included a supplemental $22.5 million Amtrak appropriation. But, seemingly with everything having to do with Amtrak, it wasn't enough, because when they forced us to do that, we said our costs are going to be more than $22.6 million to continue these trains as long as you're telling us we have to continue them. And they called BS on us. They said, nah, we don't believe it. This is all you're getting, and you're forced to run these, and this is all the money you're going to get, period. That's just the way it is. We had no authority to remove these trains by congressional mandate in the continuing resolution. So then the General Accounting Office did get involved. Remember, I had, earlier, Senator Hutchison said she was going to sic the GAO on us to look at our costing. Well, they got involved and they did a study, and the GAO says, well, actually, Amtrak's telling the truth here. It's going to cost them $36.1 million to continue to run these trains as long as you're telling them to. So they increased our financial gap by $13.6 million. That was the environment. All right. So those who were looking to hold Amtrak's feet to the financial fire, and they were calling us irresponsible stewards, let's look at privatizing Amtrak, right? Get
right.
Other people to run this. They'll run it and make money at it.
Right.
Well, they're causing us. They are the cause for us to not be able to hit the mandate that they themselves established. That was the, idiocy of the environment that we were operating within. That then led to the formation of the Amtrak Reform Council, because they said, Congress, we need to take a whole nother look at this thing. Should Amtrak be privatized? Should we accelerate this time when Amtrak has to be free of operating subsidy? So they established this Amtrak Reform Council with politically appointed representatives to then make their own judgment about what Amtrak should be. Meanwhile, we're doing our best to do everything we can with the resources that we had to satisfy that congressional mandate. Okay. So this is some of the blowback that happened right after we made these announcements. So, when you were talking, Griff, about this period of time being critical in the history of Amtrak, it certainly was, because the Amtrak you see today is pretty much along the template of what ended up after we went through all this. It's gone, close to 30 years almost, based on what we endured in that, period of time when I was with Amtrak. So here's the saga with the Texas Eagle. You okay to segue into that?
Sir, I'm ready.
Okay.
We're ready.
So first off, backdrop. The Mineola Eagle stop was established on April 28th of 1996.
Correct.
I came February 1st. So the Eagle had only had its stop initiated, 1 month and 26 days after I started. And I don't know if you recall or not, remember Willie Brown, who was the mayor of San Francisco?
I was very involved in all of that, yes.
Yep. He was also, I think he was actually the chair of the Democratic National Committee, I think, one year.
Indeed he was.
And I think he actually ran the convention when Bill Clinton was, nominated to be the Democratic representative.
On the grand inaugural opening, as a footnote, the Mineola crowd all came over to Longview to get on the train to ride the 45 minutes over to Mineola for the ribbon cutting.
Mm-hmm.
And just for a historical footnote, for people who might be interested, Mr. Mayor Willie Brown of San Francisco arrived in Longview on the Getty family private jet. And he had the Getty, the John Paul Getty heirs with him, who were also in attendance at that inaugural. He wrote all of us a lovely letter. I have it framed on my wall to this day.
Very cool.
Of appreciation about how well we treated him. But yes, it was a national event.
It was a national event, right? And it's important that one understands this. And
we must say, forgive me, we must say, so people that don't know, Willie Brown's hometown had been Mineola, Texas.
that was the next thing I was going to say.
Good.
That's
Okay,
the
go
connection.
ahead.
He was
Right.
he was a native of Mineola, and his influence helped influence Amtrak to establish that station stop.
Yes.
He was a factor in that. So that was
Yeah.
why it was important that he be a part then of the inauguration of that station stop when it happened. Okay. So and here's your date, Griff. We were dancing around this date before. I forgot what it was specifically. We announced the Texas Eagle elimination August 8th of 1996. That was the day we announced all of the route restructurings. So I went to the board on, was it July 11th? I think it was. And it took that long before we could actually make the announcement, August 8th. And
was Mr. Collins the single dissenting vote, or were there other board members?
Yeah, he was the only one that said absolutely not. I think the other board members, none of them liked it. None of them wanted it. But I told them, again, we're not making the rules. We're just playing the game. And for us to play the game within those rules that have been established, we don't see another way out. We honestly don't. And this is the least painful means of hitting, getting on this glide path to being free of subsidy. And mail and express was a big part of the package. We have to get there. All right. So, yeah, Dan, he definitely voted no all the way around, but it was a month later that he responded in that letter to Mayor Carroll, a month after this announcement. So we had the announcement on August 8th, and he sent that letter on September 3rd, right? Okay, so we had that statutory 90-day notification law. So that meant that effective November 10th, all those trains would no longer operate. But the Cardinal was included because it was part of the continuing resolution. It was hard-coded into that train's going to run as long as Amtrak runs. So those trains were then removed from Amtrak's inventory as of August 8th of 1996. All right, then, honestly, I felt like public enemy number one in Texas. Well, I felt like public enemy number one in a lot of places because, it was point that I was the one who was making this happen. It was Mark Kane, president of Amtrak Intercity. He's making this announcement that all of this is changing, and all of the things that are coming at me. So, unfortunately, this announcement happened 2 years, plus or minus a couple months after the date that I announced that Burlington Northern was withdrawing its intermodal services from Texas. Because
2 years to the day.
No, not quite to the date. It was
okay.
See, I did that in like March of 95. Yeah, March of 95. So this was like a year and a half, or a little, it's like 2 years. Let's just say 2 years. Okay. So I had made this announcement that Burlington Northern is going to withdraw from Texas because we couldn't get enough locomotives from the corporation because Jerry Grinstein was wanting to pay down debt. He wasn't supportive of getting more locomotives to grow the business. So we had an opportunity to get Evergreen Marine's business on Burlington Northern from the Union Pacific. And it would have taken us like about 20 locomotives to get that business. And I couldn't get it. The corporation wanted to keep them for coal, grain, merchandise, and all that. I just couldn't get the locomotives. So I said, okay, the least profitable part of our network, it was still profitable. And this is in my book. It's laid out in gory detail in there. Least profitable part of our system was our business in and out of Texas. So I said, what if we withdrew from Texas? Could I keep those locomotives that are serving us in Texas in order to get this other business for our corridors that were more profitable for us? And I was told yes. So we did that. Well, Barbara Jordan, I don't know if you remember Barbara Jordan or not. She was a congresswoman from Texas.
Yes.
A civil rights icon, wonderful woman and all that. From Houston, but she was living in Austin. She was a professor at University of Texas at Austin. She was on our board of directors, Burlington Northerns. And this decision that we're going to withdraw from Texas, she was not forewarned about. Okay, that wasn't my job. That was Jerry Grinstein's job to forewarn her. He didn't forewarn her about it. She went ballistic with that. And she blamed me for that. I caught her wrath and I got blackballed in the company because of that. So, here, I'm saying, okay, now Amtrak's going to eliminate the Texas Eagle right after I did that. So I was, doing broadcasts. I was, opening myself up for interviews with radio state or TV stations throughout the country that were affected by this, including those in Texas. So like the DFW stations, KDFW, whatever, they were interviewing me and I'm explaining this. So my former coworkers at Burlington Northern, they're seeing me on TV and they're sending me messages saying, holy crap, Texas must think you hate them because after what happened with intermodal, now you've done this. And I'm going, it's not my choice. I don't really want to do this, but we had to do it. It was brutal.
Question, do you have recollection of the meeting that Mayor Thomas Barr held in Fort Worth and you came down? I think that took great courage because you walked right into the fire pit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But remember, tell the truth, even if it hurts. Had to do it.
What was that meeting held in the station? I know it was a public forum.
I don't remember now. It was a public forum. It was in Fort Worth. And I don't remember. I don't know. Again, the fog of time. It's been almost 30 years.
But the mood probably was not kind, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, and when things like that happen, the attacks become personal, which is really sad. I wasn't trying to do something to target a state or a train or anything. It was just, given our situation, the trains that lost the most money were the ones that we had on the list to go and try to match up with the greatest mail and express opportunities.
Are you comfortable giving us an example of a personal attack, or do you remember when you say it got personal, you don't mean you were ever physically attacked. You were just
reputation.
Yeah.
People attack you personally. That, I see it today. I see it when Amtrak makes decisions today about something they're going to do. I read what was written in, magazines and, I don't go out of my way to read that stuff, but I become aware of it because I'm still on Amtrak's clipping services, believe it or not. I still get every day their news clippings.
Oh, great.
My friend Mark Magliari hooked me into that 20 years ago, and I'm still getting them. And I see that the Amtrak executives are, blistered in the media because certain factions, God bless those factions. I mean, they're all seeing things from their vantage point, and they think based on what they know that this is what should be done. Well, I was looking at this from a different perspective. I'm looking at it from all kinds of different perspectives and what's the best overall global picture, picture for Amtrak, the course of action should be taken. And these other factions don't. So, Dan Collins, he made it personal in board meetings. What are you doing? It's you, and I'm saying, it's not me. Tell the truth, even if it hurts. This is the truth. I can't change the truth, right? The truth is the truth. It's absolute. Okay. I hired Doug Sizemore. He didn't want to go with the Santa Fe after the Burlington Northern Santa Fe merger. He didn't want to go to Fort Worth, so he was still in the Chicago area. Well, that's where we were headquartered, Amtrak Intercity. We needed a chief mechanical officer in the worst way, somebody that had good business sense and all that. And I was able to convince Doug to work for us, which I still don't understand how that worked out. Doug was such a saint to do that. And we had to make some tough decisions on moving maintenance from different places, shutting down the wheel shop at Beech Grove, moving it to the Northeast corridor where we could be much more efficient and all that. The unions made that a personal thing. They personally attacked Doug. Dan Collins personally attacked Doug. Horrible things were written to our board about both Doug and me. And I had to write to our board about this is what the truth is about all this stuff. And, you can choose to make this a personal issue, attacking us, make it a vendetta, or you can trust us. that we're going to do the right thing. And this is why I'm telling you what we're doing is right. And I would focus on facts. But you know what, Griff? When you're having to spend, 30% of your time defending yourself, you're not able to focus on the positive. You're trying to protect or to cover tracks and not cover tracks. That's a bad connotation. You're having to, relive stuff that you should be past. In other words, don't put us back there. Let us move forward. And it was so difficult in that environment to do that, which I'll talk about, towards the end when I give my reflections on what it was like working with Amtrak. But that's an example.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. You talked about, Senator Hutchison was wonderful in what she said about trying to help the Eagle, and yet there was that backside where then she also called for the GAO investigation of Amtrak. So, you have things that were said to your face and very much support. Then you see things going on in the background they were undermining, frankly. Senator Barr of Fort Worth was wonderful. I can't say enough about, Mayor Celia Boswell of Mineola Mayor Celia Boswell and Mayor Audrey Carroll. What they did to help us out was just phenomenal. On October 10th of 1996, we announced the continuation of the jeopardized trains until May 10th of 1997. And that was because of the continuing resolution. That's when that actually got passed, October 10th. We started negotiations on financial support from Texas to continue to run the Eagle, as well as Arkansas, okay? Because Arkansas was going to lose all Amtrak service. Texas wouldn't lose all. It would lose a big chunk of it if the Eagle went away, but it still had the Sunset Limited. So what the continuing resolution was supposed to do is give us time to negotiate with the states that were affected by these trains that would be taken off to get them to back them financially. Now, the idea for backing financially was to actually provide money without attachments, right? Don't attach anything to it. This is except to keep that train running. It would be no different than the state support we get from Illinois or Wisconsin to run the trains between Chicago and Milwaukee, or the Illinois support for the trains going down to St. Louis from Chicago, or Michigan support for the Chicago to Detroit trains, whatever. This is an outright grant. That was what it was supposed to have been. Okay, so we started working with Texas and Arkansas immediately with regards to the Eagle, because that's what I'm talking about here. We did it with the other trains too, the Pioneer.
This is a part of the story I don't think any of us know. So I don't want to misspeak here. What I heard you say was Amtrak opened the door with the states of Arkansas and Texas to explore state support.
Yeah, because we've
never, that's something we didn't know. Okay.
Again, the continuing resolution was it was supposed to be $22.6 million from the feds to keep the trains running, which we said is not enough. And they said, well, tough. That's all you get. And here's the law. You have to run them no matter what. And it's not our fault if you don't fill the budget gap. And we go, so yeah, that was to give us that 6 months of time to get the states to provide the support needed to keep those trains running. All right, February 10th of 1997, we still hadn't gotten that state support from Texas or Arkansas.
I'm interested. Do you have any knowledge at all? Did like Arkansas say, no, we don't know what you're talking about? Or did Texas slam the door?
Arkansas said no. It didn't hit the top of their priority list of things as a state that they wanted to fund. Texas, we were getting not only the support from like Kay Bailey Hutchison, she's saying she wants this train, and she was putting some, moral suasion on the locals you need to convince the state to step up. Ken Barr of Fort Worth, Celia Boswell, Audrey Carroll. They were just champions to get the state moving to do something to help us out. But by February 10th of 1997, we still had not gotten any support from any state for any of these trains that were on the discontinuation list. So We posted formal Texas Eagle, as well as these other states, discontinuance notices effective May 10th of 1997. We had no choice. We have a 90-day statutory requirement. This is the law. You must give 90 days notice. Well, the money wasn't appearing, and our budget gap was getting worse because we were running trains that we weren't being fully, funded for by the feds, right? We had a timetable deadline. Oh, so again, the Texas Eagle was removed again from Amtrak's inventory. We had brought it back in when we started it up. Now we could not sell any inventory on that train or those other trains after that date.
Right.
Right about this time, the discussions with Texas changed because they said they're not going to give us outright funding, period. We're going, oh, crap. We don't want the train to go away. But yet, politically, we needed Senator Hutchison's support. We needed her support. So we said to the state, and by the way, the other senator from Texas at the time was Phil Graham.
Right.
Phil Graham was an economics professor, and he was more of a minimalist when it came to federal government, right? Get the government uninvolved. Right. So frankly, he was not a supporter of the Eagle. He said, survival of the fittest. This is Darwinism, right? Right. If you can't make it, you can't make it. If we as a country believe this is not worth investing in, like our military, like Social Security, like, Medicare, like, the national defense, in general, whatever, then it comes out of the budget. Okay. So that was the dynamic we had going on there. So we really wanted Senator Hutchison's support. So we said to Texas, well, what else could we do? I don't remember if it was us or Texas. I think it was Texas that said, okay, would you consider a loan?
I can, if you'll allow me to briefly
Go ahead,
say,
please.
I can tell you that story.
All right.
Mayor, and I know this factually. Mayor Carroll had a city manager named Tony Williams. And Mayor Audrey Carroll and Tony went to see the Lieutenant Governor, Bill Ratliff, who was from East Texas, not from Marshall, but not from far away. And they went to Austin to see him. And he was trying to be helpful, but they were hitting brick walls in this conversation. And the city manager at Marshall, Tony Williams, said, Governor, as you know, they call whether you're lieutenant governor or governor, he said, Governor, what if Texas loaned Amtrak the money in a bridge gap? That's where that happened.
Okay.
And the lieutenant governor said, that might be possible. So proceed, please.
Okay, so there you go. Thanks for filling in that gap. I didn't know that.
Yes, sir.
So they say to me, well, would we consider a loan? I'm going, a loan? We're borrowing money hand over fist. We were buying these P-42 locomotives to replace the F-40s. We didn't have, our credit rating was horrible to get the loan for the P-42s. We're still taking.
This is a great place to put in the footnote that we promised our viewers from yesterday. The interest and depreciation on a superliner per day was how much money?
Well, it wasn't interest and depreciation. It was principal and interest.
Principal and interest. I misspoke.
Yeah. On a superliner one car, it was $615 a day for a coach, $643 a day for a sleeper. And by the way, for a P-40 locomotive, and we had some, we had the old F-40s, but Amtrak actually bought some P-40 locomotives before I got there, and we were buying P-42s. That's one of the things I was working on, in addition to all this other stuff, right, to get the locomotive fleet renewed. Those P-40 locomotives, we were paying $595 a day in principal and interest. Put this in perspective. We were paying more in principal and interest for the car than the locomotive. And here I'm coming out of Burlington Northern, where I was head of equipment management, right? So I'm, justifying with our board to buy jumbo covered hoppers to carry grain, profitable wheat out of North Dakota and Montana for export out of the Pacific Northwest and all that. I could buy 20 of the 286,000 pound capacity jumbo covered hoppers, which generated excellent profitability for us, I get 20 of those for what Amtrak paid for one car that they lost their rear end on operating. That's the perspective that I was coming in with. By the way, you take that $643 a day for a sleeper, you want to use today's dollars with inflation, today that's $1,260 a day, $1,260.
And don't, I know you won't let me misspeak here. And this is principal and interest money that if you don't pay every month, some creditor is going to come and tie up your locomotive and car fleet, and you're not going to be able to operate. Is that
you got that right? They repossess it. Right, because Amtrak wasn't getting capital grants to let us renew the business.
Right.
We were having to come up with our own financing. And what, the analogy I like to use is, remember the old Popeye cartoons and Wimpy, who loved the hamburgers, but he never had any money. Right. And he says, why don't you give me a hamburger today and I'll pay you tomorrow? That kind of a thing. That's what Amtrak was doing. We were borrowing on the come that we're going to get an operating subsidy in the future, which we had no idea if it would come. And it was doubtful we would get capital money except to support the Northeast corridor for the Canton area and all that stuff, what I talked about in one of the earlier episodes. So it was just a bizarre environment. It was crazy. How do you plan a business like that? So, moving on.
Texas has said, will you consider a loan?
Yeah. And I go, shoot, diplomatically.
Correct.
So I talked to Tom Downs about it, and and he basically said the same thing. Crap, that doesn't get us where we need to go. The gap doesn't get filled that way. All we're doing is putting this off to the future if we do that. But yet, we were running out of cash. Like I said, that continuing resolution caused us to increase our budget deficit by another, $12.6 million, whatever the GAO said. We were going farther into the hole. All we were focused on is survival. Try to get to the next day. So we said, okay, if we agree to this, that should keep Senator Hutchison in our court to try to help us to get the funding that we need in the future. She can be our lion in the Senate to help us out, and to convince these others, including Phil Graham, to step up and help us out. So that was, part of that strategy there, that, okay, this is not what we need. It doesn't fix the problem, but we have an immediate problem. We're running out of cash. And that can help us to avoid becoming insolvent in fiscal year 1997. Does that help?
It helps greatly. And I think you've already verified this. The first person I ever heard this from was through Joy Smith and Audrey Carroll. But I think you verified this. If it had not been for the $5.6 million Texas state loan, Amtrak would have been bankrupt.
I'm not sure if we would have technically been bankrupt, but we would have hit a point of almost like being insolvent and have to go the bankruptcy route, because we simply, and I'll give you more details later on that, we were just running out of cash. And you would not
have been able to make payroll. Is that a way to say it? Maybe
something would have to give.
Okay.
We wouldn't make payroll. We wouldn't be making payments on our locomotives. We would be making payments on our superliner cars. We wouldn't be paying other suppliers. We wouldn't be paying for our fuel. We wouldn't be paying for, you name it.
So that $5.6 million loan temporarily saved the corporation.
That may be too far of a reach. But in essence, that's true, because we were on the path to insolvency.
Okay.
We were on the path to insolvency, and that loan helped us bridge the gap until we could get another round of government funding. Yeah. And, I don't know, honestly, Griff, if if it had gotten to the point where we all of a sudden couldn't make payroll, we couldn't pay for fuel, we couldn't pay for our cars and locomotives and all that, would the government then have given us another emergency appropriation, like another continuing resolution? I don't know. It never got there. But by getting that loan, I mean, the last thing we would want to do is have Amtrak in that position, because now all the critics really come out of the woods to say, this Amtrak is just it's an operating train wreck, right? And we're better off just eliminate it. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how we could want to characterize it, but the loan was critical to our existence, put it that way.
And in today's context, and it was highly touted as Amtrak was given the magnificently reduced Texas state rate of interest of 8%. And in today's climate, that's like, wow, but
yeah, right. Which is another kind of like, to me, that was salt in a wound, because we're already not getting the money we need to keep these trains running. We're not getting what Congress had intended as part of the continuing resolution, which is states to actually give grants of money, not a loan, but then you charge us the interest on top of that. And that was more salt in the wound, but you can't vent that, right? In the situation that we're in, you cannot let your true feelings show. You just have to say, okay, keep a smile on your face and forge on, do whatever we can to make another day happen for Amtrak, and keep working on trying to do all these other things to make this a more efficient and effective operation, and try to find other opportunities like mail and express, pursue those to generate our own subsidies. Okay, ready to move on?
Ready.
Okay, so again, we have to publish timetables, and the Texas Eagle is not going to be in the May 11th timetable, right? So I have a note in here from my calendar. On March 18th, Brian Adam, who was just an absolute saint in Amtrak's finance department, he was the one that I had to work with to get the P-42 locomotives. Brian performed miracles for us to get financing for those. Absolute miracles. I can't tout that guy enough. He, and then Jad Roberts of Amtrak's law department, another saint, absolute saint, working for Daniela Winkler, who came to Amtrak same day that I did as the head of the law department. These people were just incredible. So, Brian and Jad, they started working on March 18th on the Eagle loan documents. I put a note here, the goal of Senate and House approval by May 2nd, Texas House and Senate were supposed to approve this all by May 2nd. The governor was supposed to sign it by May 7th. And at that time, they said we would have 12 former Santa Fe Transdorms be okay as loan collateral. The Santa Fe Transdorms were cars that were inherited by Amtrak. Actually, Amtrak bought them from the Santa Fe at the time Amtrak was created in 1971, along with all the other heritage equipment from all the other railroads that chose to join Amtrak. And those cars were, they had been beaten to death. We had retired them because they needed maintenance help. Their wiring wasn't modern, all this kind of stuff. But that was all we had for collateral. We just didn't have anything else. We had these stored cars, and they were in the best shape we picked the best shaped cars that we had of those that were stored. And there are, I forget, like 60 of those cars that were stored.
Had they been head-end powered, Mr. Kane?
I don't know. I don't remember. I just can't remember. I think they were. I'm pretty sure. I don't think they were steam. They were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hotel power.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, now a big concern that I had was the appraisal process. Again, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. What do we do to come up with collateral?
Who appraised them?
We had to have an independent appraiser go in and appraise these cars. So this was hanging out. They were starting to work on the loan documents, at that time, that's a harried process to go through that. Trust me, having gone through that kind of a thing before in other circumstances too. So we're dealing with that. March 26th, that's 1 week later, the first appraisals of the cars come in and they don't hit it. So Texas says, we need to increase the collateral. So we start working on, okay, let's getting some more of these cars. What are the next best cars? Getting those appraised.
I heard, as a footnote, ladies and gentlemen, I heard Mayor Celia Boswell of Mineola tell this story personally, that she called Tom Downs at home at 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock his time, and told him that the state has to have more Santa Fe high-level equipment as collateral.
That would have been right around March 26th of 1997. Yep.
Okay.
Now here, so I told you that working with Amtrak was bizarre, and I'll talk more about that later. But on March 31st, the Federal Railroad Administration, which was to our face saying they're doing all these things to support us, right? They're part of the DOT. On that date, I got a call from the guy on Burlington Northern Santa Fe, who I had, been a coworker with in many capacities for 18 years. Okay. And he was the Amtrak liaison. And he calls me, he says, Mark, the FRA is polling all the freight railroads about what they think about a privatization of Amtrak. So we are doing all in our power to do everything that we are told that we must do under the terms that we have been told, that the rules of the games that have been established by these others. So now here's the FRA, because you have this Amtrak Reform Council. Remember, they're going on at the same time. So now the FRA is doing this to the freight railroads who hate our guts, right?
This is, Mr. Kane, this is such significant news. I don't think anyone knows that.
No.
That never trickled down to, so the
of course,
feds,
because I didn't tell anybody that.
you didn't tell you
I
didn't
would
say
not.
the
Yeah.
feds themselves were now polling the legacy freight railroads. Basically, my words, but do you want the passenger trains back and we'll pay you to run them?
No.
Okay.
Privatize
Then
it.
what did
Get
it
a
mean?
different operator. Put it in the private sector. Take it out of the government sector. No longer have
Okay,
Amtrak stock be owned by the Department of Transportation owned Amtrak stock. And also, believe it or not, the freight railroads still own Amtrak stock.
Oh yeah, don't the freight railroads, correct me if I'm wrong, don't the freight railroads own 51% of Amtrak stock?
No, it's not
No.
51. The federal government owns the majority of it. And I think that their share has been diluted. The freight railroad's share has been diluted over time because of all the money the federal government has put into Amtrak. But they still own some, which comes from when the railroads had an opportunity to take either cash or stock when they turned over their equipment to Amtrak when it was formed. Some of the railroads took cash, some of them took stock. So some of those railroads still own stock in Amtrak. Yeah.
Okay, so the bottom line here, so the FRA is doing a private poll. Do we want to privatize Amtrak, which a legacy freight railroad may or may not wish to have bid on, but you'll open this up to a private enterprise bidder to operate the service.
Correct. And they wanted to have an answer by April 18th. So this was March 31st.
Good Lord.
They were giving them
basically
2 weeks to respond back with an answer to that.
How could you? That's such a complicated subject. 2 weeks. Go ahead, sir. Gosh.
Yeah, that was the life we lived. That was the environment we're operating in. Okay, on April 1st of 1997, I had a note in my papers that as of that date, the Texas House Appropriations Subcommittee was, working on this Eagle loan legislation, right? It was a loan. And on that date, I had a note that 20 of the 30 members of that subcommittee were served by either the Eagle or the Sunset. So 2/3 of them had a personal, like a vested interest in Amtrak. And that as of that date on April 1st, my note said that the House Appropriations Committee would take up the Eagle loan issue on Thursday, April 4th at 1:30 p.m. But before they would take that up, they wanted to have somebody from Amtrak come down and sit in the hot seat and be grilled about, all right, what's this all about? Why is this necessary? All that. And that was me. I was the person who went down to Austin, and I was there on April
didn't
3rd of 1997.
Wasn't Debbie Marciniak or by that time Debbie here with you?
Debbie Hare, no, she did not come with on that one, I don't
Okay.
think. But
Okay.
Amy Ellsbury, I think from
Okay, I
Washington,
knew
D.C.
somebody was, I just remember somebody being with
Yeah, yeah, she was with. And
so
you
you're
talk-
there, you're the guy.
I'm the guy, I'm it. So here I am before all these people, and it was a gallery. They had a whole gallery there of people in this room. And all right, the spotlight's on me. And it was more than an hour and a half. They're just firing questions at me. And Griff, all I did is tell the truth. And they're, say, why are you picking on Texas? I said, we're not picking on Texas. This is the situation that we're in, and we don't want to lose any trains, but one and one's not adding up to two for us. All right. We're short of money to satisfy our mandate. So we have to live within our means, tell the truth, even if it hurts. So I don't know if you remember or not, but at that time there was a really popular movie with Tom Cruise called Show Me the Money. Or no, it was, Show Me the Money. Jerry Maguire was the name of the movie. Correct. And the motto out of that was show me the money, because he was a sports agent, right? And the adage was, show me the money,
sure,
and everything. So I go through that hearing, and let me show you that. What did I get out of? Let's go to this one right here. What did I get out of that hearing? I got an assurance, and I'm sharing. You can see this shirt
very well.
Okay, that's what they gave me, and I'll tell you what. I'll be honest. Some of those people were feeling bad for me because they're saying, holy crap, you were just getting beat up. You were getting the snot kicked out of you, and you kept your composure. You answered all of our questions. We sensed your honesty that, and we got a feeling that, Amtrak's not being managed by a bunch of idiots, that, there's a method to your madness here. We may see it as madness, but from your standpoint, we understand it's not mad. There's a reason for this. So they said, we want to give you something. And they gave me this shirt. And in case you can't see that logo really, really close, that's what it is right there. And you can see in the corner, there's this House Committee on Appropriations.
Wow.
So I have yet to wear that shirt. I kept it in my, through several moves. I've kept that shirt because, I have scars on my rear end to this day. But I can point to that shirt and say, yeah, I can remember how I got those scars.
Did you, you know what? Thank you so much, Mr. Kane, for sharing that with us. We had heard anecdotally about those shirts, but that I didn't know if that was an urban legend or if it were true. And it is true.
It is true. Yeah. And you see the evidence of it.
Did you come out of Austin? Did you come out of Austin after that contentious hearing or after that tough hearing with the feeling that the loan was going to go through? Did you have a feeling one way or the other yet?
I honestly wasn't sure what to make of it, but Amy was there, and Amy said to me, how do you think it went? And I said, I honestly have no idea. And she said, I think it was phenomenal. She says, I honestly don't know how it could have gone better. Okay, how can you read the room? How many people supported? She says, I'm not sure, but she says, I think that you convinced the majority of that room that this is something that should be supported and that Amtrak will live up to its word and pay back this money.
Right.
So I said, well, gosh, Amy, I sure hope you're right, because I just don't have a feel for it. And we just went from there. So March 20th, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to get back to my notes here. I'm sorry. Okay, April 8th, I have a note that Mayor Celia Boswell said Texas cities would underwrite the Eagle loan, but they needed additional car collateral. So maybe that was the time she called Tom Downs. I don't know. That was probably it, because the state of Texas said, okay, all right, we'll underwrite the loan, but you cities, you're going to have to step up,
right,
and underwrite our underwriting, basically.
Right.
All right, you're going to have to put your money on the line. which that was pretty brash on the part of the state of Texas. Illinois doesn't do that. Wisconsin doesn't do that. Michigan doesn't do that. California doesn't do that. Washington, Oregon, they don't do that. Texas did that. And to their credit, the cities stepped up.
Well, okay, question. Urban legend or truth? Is it true then that every online city on the Texas Eagle route from Texarkana to San Antonio, every station stop, did each one of those cities have to underwrite this loan?
I do not know.
I don't either.
Why don't you ask, Mayor Carroll?
I'll ask Mayor Carroll. She'll know. Okay.
Yeah,
so you would not have been a part of that part of it.
Griff, if I knew after 30 years, I've forgotten, because that wasn't as important to me as getting the money. Show me the money.
Let's keep it at the 10,000-foot view here. Then you knew, you had been notified you're not getting this money unless the city sign on.
Yes, sir. That's why I had it in my notes.
Okay.
So then April 8th, the same day that Mayor Boswell called and said that the Texas cities would underwrite the loan, but they needed additional collateral. That same date, the Texas House Appropriations Committee took a vote. And this was, that was on April 8th. They were supposed to have done on April 4th at 1:30. They had me there April 3rd. And, it's nothing happens fast, right? Although this was happening in light speed when it comes to government action. April 8th, the Appropriations Committee voted 21 yes, 2 no, and 4 present on the Eagle enabling legislation. That was one thing. That was one domino that had to fall. The second domino was an emergency appropriation overall legislation. The vote on that was 21 yes, 0 no, and 6 present on that. So nobody voted no on that. So, Amy said, Mark, I think you did as good as you could have done. I think what happened was better than we could have ever expected. Well, I got ratification that, it must have worked. It must have worked. So, I know that it wasn't just me. I don't mean to say that. I mean, the mayors were phenomenal. Senator Hutchison, she was putting pressure on and all that kind of stuff too. So April 11th, then 3 days later, we thought we had the loan finalized. That at that point, then the Amtrak bill had to go to the full Texas State Senate.
Right.
A Burlington Northern contact called me, not contract. A BN contact called me to say the AAR was preparing to draft a position paper saying it did not support any use of taxes to support Amtrak.
Who was fixing? Who was? Oh, Association of American Railroads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Association of American Railroads. So here, Amtrak is a member of the Association of American Railroads, along with all these other freight railroads. And they're saying, as part of, providing feedback to this ARC, Amtrak Reform Council, they're saying they don't think that Amtrak should get any tax support at all.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, you sure know who your friends are, right?
Right.
Again, I don't think anybody in the world knows that happened until
it did have the AAR did produce that document and circulate it as an official position. Okay.
They were drafting that position paper to say that. I don't have it in my notes that it actually said that. I'm just telling you what I had in my notes as I was going back.
I understand.
All right, that's April 11th now. And by the way, all right, this is happening at the same time that we're trying to get Texas to approve a loan for us. But if we're not going to get any tax support, how are we going to pay back the loan? Right? So, the freight railroads didn't want Amtrak.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Right.
Okay. And I understand that. That's how I felt when I was with the freight railroad. Right. My life was easier without Amtrak. April 28th. Here's a note. We started trial shipments of Stroh's beer from Fort Worth to Los Angeles via the Eagle and the Sunset. You may remember that.
I do.
So when I was saying we were pushing mail and express, we were scrambling, do everything we can to get this going as soon as we could under incredible odds. May 2nd, the Texas House passed the Amtrak bill. This is a full House now on a vote of 107 to 34. Yes, 107 yes, 34 no's. So we passed the House. May 10th, we still didn't have the loan. We had to make a decision. May 11th was the new timetable date. No Eagle. All right. But things were moving along enough. We kept the Eagle running. But on May 10th, we reduced the consist on the Eagle with no Chicago to Los Angeles cars on it because it was just not sure that it was going to run.
Correct.
May 11th, the new timetable came out. No Eagle. May 15th, the Texas Comptroller weighs in and says he wanted the collateral cars fully insured, and he signed an agreement with the cities to back up the loan. But that he said, but you know what? This is likely going to cause a 2-month delay. That's what he said on May 15th. And then Texas DOT claimed that one of the collateral cars, which we were storing at Beech Grove, had been vandalized. So now we have to come up with another collateral car to replace that. May 20th, the Amtrak's federal subsidy for the year 2000 or for 1997, fiscal year 97, which starts October 1st, was set at $750 million. The House number had been around 540 million, as I mentioned earlier. The Senate was up around 900 million. Administration was at 970. Amtrak was at 1.07, $1.066 billion. They approved $750 million for the next year. It's not enough to do everything they told us to do, right? But that was what they said. Okay, you count on that. June 3rd.
With every hold June 3rd for 1 second, please,
Yep.
sir. Sir, with everything you had going on with this entire global complicated issue, I heard you say this, my words, but I heard you say it. You had to stop and deal with the issue that some politician, some ranking politician somewhere had gotten word that one of our collateral cars at Beech Grove had been vandalized.
Oh, definitely.
So you had to go from 50,000 feet down to weed level.
Oh,
and
that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, how could that? I mean, we're both railroaders here. How could that ever happen? You know what?
Oh, Griff.
Somebody picked up the phone and called somebody they knew. You know, I think that car is wrecked, damn. You know, I mean,
Griff, that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, at the same time, Doug Sizemore, who I told you I had got convinced to come to join us as chief mechanical officer, at the same time, he had been invited by a rail passenger affiliation group to go and speak in St. Louis. I don't know if it was NARP, but there was a NARP reporter there. And at that place, Doug was saying, we're doing all we can to act like a business. And he says, one of the things I'm trying to do is really look at Beech Grove about how we could be more efficient, more effective with that operation, because we're only operating one shift a day there. But he says, we're a 24/7 operation. And these cars, they cost us tons of money in principal and interest every day. I gave Doug that number, so he knew it. And when I told him that number, he was floored also, you know, that we would pay that much for a car. Right.
surely.
And Doug made a comment there. He says, you know, at Beech Grove, it's like Sleepy Hollow there. Well, somebody took that quote and said, Doug Sizemore says Beech Grove and the employees there are like Sleepy Hollow. And the union got a hold of that. They gave it to Dan Collins. Dan Collins got a hold of me and Tom Downs and said, fire this Doug Sizemore. He said that our employees are like Sleepy Hollow. Then it goes to the whole board. Whole Amtrak board says, what's this? You can't have an executive on your team there who says that this kind of thing about our employees. And I said, wait. He didn't say that about employees. He said that about our management. That's how we're managing this asset. It's like Sleepy Hollow, right?
Right.
I said, don't conflate this. You know what? I had to spend 3 full days doing damage control over that, plus portions of many other days doing damage control over that, because the context of that quote was taken out of context. I mean, that quote was taken out of context. So when you're saying, okay, so this one collateral car, that became on my list, holy crap, that's the tip of the iceberg.
Well, so
don't forget,
there's 1,000 of those.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on shifting maintenance places. We're working on run-throughs. We're working on, I mean, I'm fighting with Senator Wyden for the Oregon train, and whether the Oregon Department of Transportation is going to step up and help finance that, whether or not we let Amtrak West take over trying to get the Desert Wind continued just between LA and Las Vegas, working with the state of California and Nevada. They had really good government affairs people in the state level for there. I mean,
Correct.
all this stuff's going on at the same time, you know? Okay, so I don't know. I'm sorry to get off on that segue, but
Oh no, it's all important to the story. Thank you.
Okay, so June 3rd. Let's see, okay, Texas needed FRA sign off. That's what happened there. June 3rd, the Texas said they needed FRA sign off on the loan subordination agreement.
FRA, Federal
Railroad Administration. Right.
Yes.
They said they need to have the Federal Railroad Administration sign off on the loan subordination agreement, but that happened. I mean, we worked with the FRA to get them to sign that. So then the loan agreement was supposed to be signed by that Thursday. And in fact, Carol Dillon from the Amtrak's finance department, she called me that day and she says, actually, we got the loan agreement done. So that was June 3rd. All right, June 10th. Texas Eagle then was restored as a full service train with service assured through September 31st of 1997, because that was the term of the loan. All right. We said, we will guarantee we'll keep the Texas Eagle running that long, but we would not guarantee service past that date. June 17th, 1 week later, I was in a president's meeting in Tom Downs' office, and we would have them every Monday in Washington, D.C. I had to go to Washington every Monday for this
Every week?
Yep. It got towards the end there where he would let me participate via a conference call, a video conference, but it was typically every week I'd have to fly to Washington.
Would you fly on Sunday night?
Yeah.
Or
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
And
yeah, okay.
yeah. So
You never had a weekend off.
Are you kidding me?
Got
Yeah.
it.
What was a weekend? I mean, that was just, I would go to church on Sunday and then go to work,
Right.
either in the office or all the stuff I brought home with me, whatever. So
Right.
on that date, and let me tell you that date, on June 17th, Al Altschul said that we're going to have an $80 million cash deficit at the end of fiscal 1997. That was as of September 30th. We're going to
Now,
be in
who
the
was he? Al
Altschul. He was the new chief financial officer. He took Betsy Reveal's job.
Okay.
So even with the loan that was already booked in here, we were still going to be 80 million short of cash. All right. On June 30th, Al said that he was successfully able to borrow $38 million to bridge us to the July subsidy, a one-day line of credit loan to get us to the July subsidy. And that was in spite of the fact that we had sold for $45 million. We sold a license fee to, I think it was Macaw, the cellular phone company, so that they could put cellular antennas on our catenary devices on the Northeast corridor. And we got a $45 million one-time shot for that. That's how we were scrounging to get cash to make it through. We were selling air rights like over Washington Union Station, Chicago Union Station, anything we could do. And then we were fighting with the FRA because they're saying, no, that money shouldn't go to Amtrak or the DOT. They're saying that should go to a budget deficit reduction. Congress was weighing in on that. I mean, that's, again, the degree to which we were fighting for our survival. On July 26th, we made an announcement that the Eagle would be continued for an indefinite period post September 30th, 1997, due to Mail and Express. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do.
That was September 30th. That was July 26th. We announced that it would extend beyond September 30th of 97 due to Mail Express. On September 2nd, that was when we announced my departure from Amtrak, that I was going to leave Amtrak, and I wouldn't leave until I would go through, I think it was October 1st, the start of the new fiscal year, but I would stick around through that period.
That's just because you had said that when you were originally employed, that you would be here.
Yeah,
for
I
about
did
2
not
years.
mention that to you previously on these sessions, But when Tom Downs recruited me, I said I would be willing to do this for up to 2 years. For up to 2 years. And I said, I will not guarantee I'll stay the full 2 years, but I'll do my best to stay for up to that period of time. And there was a very, very attractive job opportunity that came to me through a former associate at Burlington Northern who became a headhunter. And she worked in Chicago, and we had lunch one day, and I wasn't talking to her about looking for another job or anything like that, but she just said to me, well, what are you planning to do? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I promised I'd stay for up to 2 years, and I'm getting relatively close to that now. So I haven't considered any jobs up till now, but I probably ought to consider it. And she says, well, I have one I'd like to run by you. So she told me about it. It was very intriguing, in a sweet spot for me. So that's a whole nother story. This is stuff past my time at Amtrak, but we're talking the Eagle saga.
Yes,
February 6th of 1978, the frequency of the Eagle was increased from 3 to 4 days a week and extended to California, supported by Mail and Express. May 1999, the Texas Eagle loan was repaid in full by Amtrak with interest.
it was.
May 21st of 2000, daily service was restored between Chicago and San Antonio due to Mail and Express. Okay, so again, the Mail and Express initiative of Amtrak gets panned today, saying what a blunder, and all that. But it was serious. We saw that as our way to be able to hit that government mandate. And after Tom Downs left, after I left, Tom Downs left shortly after that. George Warrington was made the interim CEO of Amtrak, and he became then the full CEO after the board went through its vetting process and all that. And George adopted that Mail and Express strategy. And honestly, he was not in support of it when I was there. He accepted it as a necessary evil for intercity, but and Gil Mallory, he was not in support of it. It was like pulling teeth out of hens to get their support on what we needed from NEC and Amtrak West for that Mail and Express initiative. And that changed when George came, which was after I left.
May I ask your
Yes, sir.
professional opinion on something?
Yeah.
Does the possibility, and regardless of why or how Amtrak in the 21st century divested itself of Mail and Express, does that opportunity still exist out there? Are there viable, lucrative Mail and Express contracts out there in 2023 to be had? Or has that gone away?
I'd say that it's a situational thing. I think that there are some markets where definitely there would be such an opportunity, especially on if you look in my book about the history of BN Intermodal, we called it the black hole. That was the area like 400 miles on each side of the Mississippi River, where the Western railroads meet the Eastern railroads. From Chicago to Columbus, Ohio, that is not an attractive market for Eastern railroads. Too short haul. From Chicago to Kansas City is not an attractive market for Western railroads. It's too short of a haul, especially like with intermodal domestic containerization. Your terminal costs are too high. You don't have enough line haul miles to spread those terminal costs over to make it financially viable. But if you could look at it like a single line carrier with one income statement, one balance sheet, right? Now you have a 900-mile haul, 800-mile haul, 900-mile haul. Well, you know what? Amtrak has those hauls, single line carrier.
So Chicago to Dallas could make sense in 2023.
That would be a tougher one because I think domestic intermodal is in that market, but there might be some business that is still running over the road because the intermodal services offered by the railroads aren't fitting that need. There still may be stuff in long haul corridors that's going with team drivers. Again, I'm quite far removed from that. I just don't know today. So that's why I say situationally, I think that opportunity is there. And by the way, the whole Mail and Express thing, I did not mention this the other day, and I shouldn't say the other day, but the other time we talked, was that Mail and Express wasn't supposed to be an optional thing for Amtrak. I don't know if you knew this or not, but you look this up. 49 USC 24306. That's the federal law that enables Amtrak. It says, quote unquote, Amtrak shall take necessary action to increase its revenues from the transportation of mail and express. It doesn't say Amtrak can. It doesn't say Amtrak could. It says Amtrak shall.
Is
That
that
was a
still on the
directive.
books? Is
It's
that
in the
law
law.
still?
As far as I know, that law's still there. That law was there when I joined Amtrak. I was aware of it, and I talked to Tom Downs about that. Very few people knew that. And see, here's another thing that was really, gumming up the works when I got there, is that I got there right around the 25th anniversary of Amtrak. That was the end of the Amtrak enabling legislation. The legislation that first enabled Amtrak, that had to be all redone. So while all this other crap's going on, we're fighting to get Amtrak reauthorized. And the freight railroads are taking shots. Pull this out, pull that out, take away the priority that Amtrak gets, all this kind of stuff. So we're fighting that battle too for our own survival, statutory survival.
Surely.
Okay, so just a couple more comments about the, with the Eagle. One name I haven't mentioned is Temple Representative Diane White DeLisi. She had a critical role in this, which I have not mentioned, in that she was the one who worded the legislation to describe that Texas loan legislation as an economic development measure. If she hadn't found that way to structure this, it probably wouldn't have flown. But so give her credit. I think that's
may I ask another footnote question?
Yeah.
By constitution, meaning from the 1840s up through today, the Texas State Legislature only meets every 2 years. It doesn't meet every year.
Yeah, biennial.
Am I safe to assume that if 1997 had been a year that the Texas State Legislature did not meet, that the Texas Eagle might not be running today? Would that be
without mail and express?
Without the loan wouldn't have happened, is what I meant.
Oh, yeah. If they hadn't passed that loan legislation at that time, you would have had to wait 2 more years to take another crack at it.
Correct. You're correct.
Probably right. I cannot say that. I cannot say that as a fact because I just don't know, but I think it's safe to presume that until we're told otherwise.
Got it. Thank you.
So, Griff, that's kind of like a rundown on the saga of the Texas Eagle. There are some, I'll call them closing comments about things I'd like to comment on if you're okay with that. Are you all right with that?
Sir, not only
Okay.
am I okay, I'm honored. It's the purpose of this podcast that you would make concluding remarks about.
Well, and there are a few, okay? It's not just a brief thing. It was so hard to do the right things at Amtrak for the general public, the common good, the employees and the taxpayers in the face of so much. There was political, there was cultural and emotional obstruction.
Wow.
Everybody had a view of what should be done from a different angle. And when you're sitting in the hot seat like I was, when you're having to look at this globally and try to balance all these interests, you are going to piss off somebody no matter what you choose to do. It was so difficult. And it is no way, the way Amtrak's run today, in terms of how things go with appropriations and all that, it's no way to run a business. You cannot plan for the long term because you don't know what money's going to be available, right? What you think you have today could be gone after the next election, right? The board composition at Amtrak was an incredible challenge. There were political appointments without business people on the board. We had a controversy on the board related to one of the board members having their nose bent out of shape because this person wanted to be addressed as the honorable, the honorable so-and-so.
Wait. I mean, if you're sitting there, you can't say Mr. You would have. Is that what that means? You have to say.
If they would get a letter from Amtrak, the letter should say to the honorable XYZ. All right. See, now there is a protocol there is a protocol that is used for people that are appointed to, if they're like a former elected official,
Surely.
they carry that title honorable till they die. That
Correct.
is standard protocol. If a person is appointed by the president to something and required Senate approval, they are entitled to the title honorable because
Understood.
they received a presidential appointment with Senate approval. Okay, you can look it up. That's kind of like in the.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah. All right.
So
now
this board member was upset because his mail from
his or
Amtrak,
her, right.
his or her did not
I don't
say
want to
the
put a
honor.
sex on it, right?
No, okay.
Right.
His or
Because
her,
this person
he or
was
she.
not appointed by the president, so that rule didn't apply, but they were bent out of shape because this other person who had been appointed by the president had the name honorable associated with their name. Well, come on. Right?
But isn't that called ego?
Yeah. And, like I told you earlier when we talked, when there was a controversy about what the title should be for my job, when Tom Downs got me and George and Gil into the room and said, yeah, gosh, this is not smooth to have all chief executive officers. Are you okay with being called president? And I said, basically call me whatever you want, just not late for dinner. I don't care. I'm trying to leave my ego at the door. Okay.
Right.
I want to do what's best for our customers, our employees, our shareholders. So again, that's just an example of what I'm talking about. The board micromanaged, and that made it extremely difficult to function like a business while facing endless criticism. They had to approve the china we would use in the dining cars.
The board?
Yes, that was a board decision. When we looked at Amtrak Intercity about being able to cut costs by having more durable china, right? We couldn't do what the freight railroads used to do with the sterling silver and the real china and all that kind of stuff and the silver tea service and all that. But, we had to find a way to cut costs. The board vetoed stuff that we wanted to do in order to provide a good service to our passengers and to save money, because they says, no, this is not the standard we want to set. That's micromanagement. We really accomplished a lot, though, in a short period of time that I was there. You look back at it now, Griff, and it's really phenomenal when you think about it. I wanted to show this too. Let me share the screen on that presentation.
Sure.
I wanted to show this. What did I get out of the Texas Eagle situation? This is the key to the city of Longview, Texas.
Yes, you did.
I still have that. And, I treasure that. I'm not sure if I should bring that with me the next time I drive through Longview. So if they want to give me a traffic ticket, I pull it out and maybe, get a pass or whatever. But you know what? I left a lot of blood on the cutting room floor, with my time at Amtrak. So I look at that and I say, okay, even though I know that there had to have been days, where those mayors thought that I was public enemy number one. So I take pride in having received that. But, what did we accomplish at Amtrak? This is something that I got from the board. It was awarded to me at a board meeting on November 5th of 1997. So that's about the time that I left. All right. And it says, okay, a commendation saying, okay, I'd been with the company since February of 96. And it says we, did numerous initiatives, costly initiatives, expansion, revenue opportunities, continued to establish critical partnerships with numerous states and other important partners throughout the country. We did some wonderful things. And, Debbie Hare, she was the head of Intercity, our government affairs group. And I said, Debbie, I want you to take control of all of our contract negotiations with the states. She says, what? I've never done anything like that before. I says, but Debbie, step up, do it. I'll help you out. We'll give you the resources you need. You be our point person for this, but do it like a business person. And
Mr. Kane, did Debbie ever tell you to your face the wonderful compliment she used to tell all of us behind your back if she never said it to your face? Debbie used to tell us all continuously that you were the finest executive she had ever come across at Amtrak.
No, I never heard that, but I'm honored
She
to hear that now.
she told us that many times.
See, and if she had told me that, I would say, you don't know enough people. All right. Next thing they put in here, they say, Mr. Kane oversaw the ordering, delivery, and operational implementation of 98 new P-42 locomotives, thereby allowing the retirement of older, less reliable F-40 locomotives. You know, the big deal there was we had to look at, okay, can we rebuild these F-40s or go new? And oh my gosh, the amount of time that went into that was incredible. And again, this is all going on while all this other stuff's going on. But that was key to the survival of Amtrak. Those F-40s were dying. They were just dying. Okay, in order to significantly improve asset utilization, Mr. Kane spearheaded the development implementation and import route and service changes in fiscal 97 to better serve our customers and better utilize Amtrak's limited pool of passenger equipment. All right, that's the restructuring, the restructurings that we did. In order to find ways to decrease Amtrak's future federal operating grants, Mr. Kane aggressively pursued the acquisition of additional material handling cars and road railers and implementation of a greatly expanded express program for the carriage of time-sensitive commodities. So we got that going. You know, I feel bad that it got terminated. You know, I wasn't there for the reasons why I got terminated. If maybe if you interview, Mr. Gunn, maybe he could explain that. But I thought that, but I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. This is something that Dan Collins wasn't supportive of on the board. And he would say to me, he'd say, King, don't you get it? You know what? Amtrak's never going away. Just, make them being the government, come up with what it takes to keep Amtrak going. He says, nobody's going to have the political resolve to sunset Amtrak. And I said, Dan, I respect that. I honestly do. I respect you. I respect your opinion on that, but I can't go with that as an assumption. Those are not the marching orders I've been given. I've been told we have to find a way to fill that gap. So anyway, that was one of the things listed there. Mr. Kane took a proactive leadership role in the areas of customer service, employee safety, including the establishment of a 30% year-to-year employee injury improvement goal. So then they gave this resolution. But, this does not summarize the things that we accomplished. And by the way, I want to show you this too. This was something I got from GE. They gave me this bronze plate, which has a P-42 locomotive on it. Because they knew the hell that I went through to get that done. And, Brian Adam, I think he got one of those too. Because if I had known he didn't get it, I would have given him mine, because I'll tell you what, that was something else. But I don't know maybe if there, more than this one that exists. But that meant a lot to me when GE gave me that, because we went through hell to get those locomotives in the situation that we were in. You talk about mail and express. This right here, and I cropped it. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear fully, but I'll show you a bigger picture of it in just a second. This was actually something that was put together in 2001. And there's an artist that we developed a really close relationship with when I was there. His name is Craig Thorpe. And you may remember Craig. Okay. Well,
wasn't he from the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, he's from Seattle.
Seattle,
he has done a lot of Amtrak art. And I'm trying to write an article now about what he did on Amtrak with Amtrak art. But he wrote a book talking about his experiences with railroad art, and Amtrak has a prominent role in that. But notice in this ad, this is an artist's depiction of Wenatchee, Washington, and it doesn't really look like that. You can't see the Cascades like that. You see more of these hills here, but you can see the orchards. But notice that here's one of the reefer cars here that we bought when I was there, and that was to carry perishables on the Empire Builder. And notice the map down here. You can't see it very well, but you have Mount Vernon here, you have Pasco Yakima area, feeding into the Spokane area, and Wenatchee also, and this was supposed to be, a depiction of Wenatchee with the builder coming up to pick up the express to do what? To go to Chicago and then move on. Toronto, Montreal, Boston, New York, the whole East Coast, all with Amtrak service to support all of these trains. And unfortunately, we had to renegotiate all the railroad contracts when I was there. And that Jim Larson from Amtrak, he was the one who was the point person for that. Jim just did a wonderful job, but BNSF would not agree to continuing our contract with Amtrak at the financial terms that we could live with unless we limited the amount of express cars in that train to 3 west of St. Paul. 3 cars only. That was just horrible. You know, we would carry more than that into the Twin Cities out of Chicago. But, you know, someday interview Ed Ellis. He could tell you that story. You know, there are others that were part of that could do it too. There's one more thing I want to show you here on a picture, and then I'll talk more after that. And that's this right here. You know, the railroads, the UP played the point role in this. They fought with the Surface Transportation Board, which took the place of the ICC right after I joined Amtrak. The Union Pacific fought Amtrak's right to carry mail and express, correct, even though it's in the statute. So on this day, let's see, what day was that? It was 1998, and I have actually the STP decision somewhere in one of my files, but it was in 1998. Okay, that was the year after I left. Amtrak won. So my friends at the law department, I'm no longer with Amtrak. I'm with Menasha Corporation working in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, but they send me this along with something I'm going to show you in a little bit. And they took this, you know, postcard from Washington, D.C. of like from, you know, July 4th, Washington, D.C. with all the fireworks going off. That's one side. The other side of the card, they say, future flash, city, meaning Washington, D.C., celebrates Amtrak victory in STB Express proceedings. So, you know, it was just so special, all the things that we had going. That's the postcard right there.
Oh, okay, beautiful.
Isn't that cool? And then they said to a great client and friend, good luck, Mark. Best wishes to you, every success and happiness. The law department. Those are my friends in Amtrak's law department. You know, Daniela Winkler, you know, Jed that I told you about, or yeah. Wonderful people. I mean, just wonderful people that I was working with because, you know, Griff, they got it. They knew that all these things we're doing that made their lives miserable, it was for the good of Amtrak, and they did all they could to support it. What accompanied that card was this. It's a model car of an Amtrak reefer.
I didn't even know those existed. Wow. What an artifact.
So they sent that to me with that card. And I thought, how cool is that? But see, that's very cool. That's the kind of working relationship we had. It was magical. It was really magical. Now, so the board, they gave that, you know, recognition of what we accomplished when I was there. And I stressed that word we. I didn't do that. It was you. It was Joy. It was Don Cushine. It was, you know, the whole team. So, and I break up. You know, it means so much to me what we did. It was 19 months we did it in. But we raised our revenue in Intercity 17%. In that 19-month period, in the face of all this adversity, we raised our revenue 19%. We cut our deficit 40%. 40% deficit reduction in Amtrak Intercity. That's miraculous. We increased our asset productivity as measured by the revenue we generated per car day by 24% across the entire fleet of Amtrak Intercity. And that, you know, that was for all the cars, everything we did with the eastern part of our network, with the single level cars, with the restructuring of the routes, the run-throughs, what we did at Beech Grove, changing the way we did maintenance, changing maintenance facilities. That's just remarkable in that period of time. You know, and like I said, I felt like public enemy number one. It was really, really tough. But, you know, we were able to get it done. Let's see, what else? That was page 4, page 5 here. Sorry.
No problem, sir.
Doug Sizemore, I talked about what he, did. What a gift he was to Amtrak to help us achieve all that stuff too. Lee Bullock stepping up. Just, I should not name any more names. I'm leaving people out, and I don't want to do that. Everybody was part.
Lee is going to be a future podcast guest early in 2024.
Mm-hmm. I talked about the renewal of the fleet with the P-42s. We were running those locomotives 175,000 miles a year. We, by that time, had gotten 20 years of service out of those F-40s. Right. That's beyond reasonable to get that much out of those assets. Amtrak just replaced those P-42s. They're in the process of doing that with those, what they call them, Chargers from Siemens.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
you're right.
Those locomotives have lasted, I think, 27 years, getting 175,000 miles a year. That acquisition, which we accomplished while I was there, such a key to the future of the company. We established that express initiative. We won that litigation that Amtrak continued to carry mail and express. That was a big deal. The state partnerships that we fostered when I was there, and Debbie Hare, I give her so much credit for what she did with that. I said to Debbie, we're going to have to make these contracts such that the states feel like they're getting something out of these rather than just giving Amtrak the money and getting a train. We need to step up, that we're going to make a commitment, not just that we're going to run the trains, but we're going to run them on time. She says, what do you mean? I said, I think that we should give them on-time commitments in those contracts. And she said, like what? I said, well, let's talk to Lee. Let's see what he's willing to step up to. And we were kicking around like 98% on-time performance. If we did not achieve 98% on-time performance, the amount they paid us would go down. It would ladder down. We thought, what a risk to take. But we were expecting the states to kick up their money, pay more money than they had been paying before, because we were not covering our costs, right? So here's your quid pro quo. You give us more money, we will commit to on-time performance criteria. And if we don't match that, then you pay us less. Debbie ran with that, and she got those contracts. So we really restructured the relationship with the states. And, when I came, there were a couple of guys from the state of Michigan Department of Transportation that gave me this. Right? We've always done it this way, blocking it out. And they said, Amtrak doesn't do business this way. Everything we talked to them about, they say, well, we've never done it that way before. We've never done it that way before. We think you should take this out of your lexicon. And I said, brothers, you don't have to worry about that. This has been my mantra my entire career. You don't worry about that. And I hope that you would acknowledge, Griff, that, when I was there, this is what we did. Just because we did it in the past that way? Nope.
Well, you took it a step further. You inverted the power pyramid.
But that was a we. That was something that everybody had to buy into. Tom Downs had to buy into that, right?
Yes. So
it's the credit to the team, Griff. What a team we had. And, so I was talking about state partnerships. Aside from the way that we pulled together as a team, the accomplishment that I felt most proud about anything that we did, believe it or not, was that not what the board said, where they said that I had set a goal for a 30% reduction in injuries. Anybody can set a goal. Big deal. When I got that plaque, I was happy to get it, proud to receive it without having pride. I thought, this is nice that they'd acknowledge me. I felt good about that. But to set a goal, why recognize that? See, that's a reflection of the way thinking was done in Washington. This is what we did, Griff. We had a 65% reduction in lost time employee injuries while I was there. 65%. The NEC and Amtrak West thought that we were fudging our numbers, and the unions really obstructed our efforts. But we had a passion, and Doug Sizemore, he brought this with him like I did from the freight railroad. Lee Bullock bought into it, a passion for finding the root cause of every injury. Every time there was an injury, the next morning at 7 a.m., we had a conference call with the person that was injured, that person's supervisor, other people who had the ability to decide how we did things within Amtrak Intercity. We had a conference call to talk about what happened, why it happened, what can we learn from this, what can we do differently so that it will never happen again, eliminate the root cause of the industry. You don't achieve a 65% reduction in injuries by hoping for it to happen or setting a goal. You change
May I
the way we do business.
may I add the footnote? You may not remember, but it's the only time it ever happened. It has not happened before FY 1997 or after. The entire under your leadership, the entire Texas Eagle product line from Texarkana from Chicago to San Antonio, including the LA service employees, went that entire 12-month period without an injury. Everybody. It's never happened before or since.
And see, Griff, it can be done.
It can be
it
done.
takes leadership from the top to establish that culture.
And Joy Smith and Mark Kane is where it came from. And Lee Bullock.
That's the top. That's the top. You have to live and breathe it. And you can't just talk it, you have to walk it. You have to be willing to go out and do the walkarounds and all that. And find out what do you need? What resources do you need to make this happen? And because, I never wanted to be that person that would have to call the spouse of the Amtrak employee and say, I'm sorry, we've had a tragic accident here and your spouse is not coming home. Or they're going to come home, but they're going to be missing a limb. No, I never wanted to have that happen. It doesn't happen by accident. So again, the thing I was most proud of was that improvement in safety culture, because that then led into an improvement in every other aspect of your culture. If you don't lead with safety, you're not going to have better customer service. You will not have better profitability. Just on the profitability side, in fiscal year 1995, Amtrak Intercity had 1,012 injury claims / lawsuits related to injuries. In fiscal year 1996, which I was only there for part of, I was there coming in February, so I missed the first 5 months of that year, but we started the change in safety culture when I got there. We got that down 19% to 821, from 1,012 to 821. Through the first half of fiscal year 1997, our claims / suits had been reduced to 256. Which was a reduction of 51% from 1995 and 39% from 1996. Our average claim / suit cost was $34,000.
Wow.
That 51% reduction was worth $6.5 million to Amtrak's bottom line. Now, if you have to pay an employee who is injured, who wins? That employee has not won.
Correct.
They've earned that. And I want to couch that word earned. I mean, you don't get hurt to get paid off. Like I remember when I was out running, as a dishwasher, I'd hear some of the crew would hit rough track. They say, oh, roll over and pay off, roll over and pay off. Right?
Right.
No, that's not what it's all about. Those accidents that result in a claim are an example of a safety culture that's wrong. Right? Every accident is preventable unless you have something like the Kingman derailment, where the track washed out in front of our train before the train could stop, or the barge being taken out down in Mobile, taking out the bridge in Mobile and all that. So again, this is what I want to close this talk with, until you have questions or whatever. But that is the thing that we accomplished that I was the most proud of. And our board didn't get it. That was another sign of what I thought was, a dysfunctionality of the board, that they didn't really put 2 and 2 together. And you know what? Maybe that's my fault in that I didn't explain that to them in a way that they would really fully recognize it, because the board fought us on our safety initiatives, because Dan Collins was saying that we were being coercive. When we would have an employee get on a conference call the next morning at 7 a.m., that we were bayoneting the wounded, basically. that wasn't the idea at all. It wasn't to punish that employee. It was to find out, what can we learn? Help us help you. Help us help all employees. When Doug Sizemore started stretching programs at Beech Grove, the unions complained about it. It was to reduce soft tissue injuries, pre-shift stretching programs, and they objected. Doug wasn't doing that to be bad. He was doing it to help give the employees a better life.
Sure.
Right?
I have to ask, what's objectionable about a stretching exercise? What was the objection?
You have to negotiate that. You can't impose it.
Oh,
This is a negotiable item.
okay.
And those complaints would get to our board. People would write letters to the board and they'd say, you know, to Tom Downs, they'd say, Kane and Sizemore are off the rail here. Look what they're doing to our employees. What?
Right.
Put this in context, you know?
Yes.
So again, this is part of the dysfunctionality that I went through. And, you know, I had to deal with dysfunctional things at Burlington Northern. I had to deal with dysfunctional things after I left Amtrak and went to Menasha Corporation, but not at this level, you know. So I've had diarrhea of the mouth, you know, 3 full sessions with you. So I'll shut up and leave it at that.
Sir, what you've done is given us a remarkable insight into a world that most of us knew nothing about. As we conclude, Mr. Kane, I would just like to throw out a couple of names that you and I pre-discussed that won't be new to you. Just your general impression. People, 2 important names, people who are very important to us on the Texas Eagle route and the Texas Eagles, both survivability and viability. The first of 2 names I'd like to ask you just generally comment on is George Warrington.
Mm-hmm. George was a great person to work with. We butted heads when it came to Mail and Express, believe it or not, because we were requiring of them, and I butted heads with him too on the run-throughs, because, for example, on the Capitol, we were going to have Washington, D.C. take over maintenance that Chicago would have done on turning those cars overnight to make the whole run and all that. But that's just the way things go, you know. In a business that happens. And I have the highest respect for George, just the highest respect. I think he did a great job when he took Tom Downs' place. I don't know what else I could say. You know,
okay.
when I had the opportunity, see, when we would butt heads, it would largely be because he would get feedback from people with his organization saying these inner city people are off the rail. You know, just like I'd get feedback from the board that I'm off the rail about, you know, Sleepy Hollow or stretching exercises or the 7 a.m. calls on an injury or whatever. Okay. Right. George would listen. When I would explain to George what's going on, he would say, I get it. All right. Let me work with my organization. All right. So
gosh, you know what? I'm glad you've given us a perspective. I had the privilege to be around him at length on several different occasions, and he was not necessarily a laid-back personality type.
Not at all. In fact, George was one of those people that would say, let's get it done yesterday.
Yes.
Which was not the traditional Amtrak culture that I came into.
Correct.
Yeah, mañana.
Correct.
You know, that was what I saw. George, you know, he would be more like the ready, fire, aim in some cases.
Got it. You know, and as we're talking about Mr. Warrington, I also had the privilege to be present, as a group of us did. I wasn't just singular in this instant, but I was present in the governor's private office when Amtrak repaid the $5.6 million loan. Mr. Warrington came in. The payment had already occurred, but it was the ceremonial. And of course, President Warrington brought the big facsimile check.
Yep.
And as a note, it was paid back 2 years early. It was a 5-year loan.
What was a 5-year? Oh, I was thinking it was a 2-year loan.
No, it was 5 years, and it was paid back 2 years ahead of time.
Ah.
And I just remember this is just my personal recollection. So I want to stress, ladies and gentlemen, this is just Griff Hubbard's personal feeling, but I you could just feel it in that room. There were two people who you had lined up were Governor George W. Bush, Mayor Audrey Carroll, Mayor Celia Boswell, and President George Warrington of Amtrak.
Huh.
And it was a small room, the governor's private office, and you would think it would be a large chamber. It is not. We were all we were close quarters. You could observe, you could feel. And I want to tell you the impression that I left, there were two people in that room who were of the unspoken thought of, let's get this over with and get out of here. And that was Governor Bush and President Warrington. You could just sense it, like, let's be done with this and go home. There was no speechifying and no lingering around after the presentation check.
No.
And sir, the second and final name, just general impressions of anything you'd like to say. A man who had great impact on all of us down here, Thomas Downs.
Yeah, I think he was critical to not only the survival of Amtrak, but for the way that it exists today. Because again, he supported the changes that we made in Amtrak Intercity. And if you take a look at how Amtrak is laid out today, it's basically the template is what we had, right? He put the intercity business unit, Amtrak West and Northeast Corridor in place. He supported the whole notion of product line management teams, pushing more and more responsibility and authority out into the field. I think that was critical. I don't understand why it's not still done today that way, but I'm not there. There must be a good reason for why they do things the way they do. But I think that was just critical. Tom Downs would listen. Tom Downs was a risk taker. The whole Mail and Express thing, what a risk that was. I mean, shoot, we knew that it was a long shot when we started because we didn't have real estate. You need real estate to have terminals to handle Mail and Express, right? We didn't have that. When you start carrying Mail and Express on trains, you're going to start adding time to schedules in order to switch in and out the Mail and Express cars. And I think that was one of the biggest things that caused the demise of Mail and Express, was that it was impacting the passenger schedules and everything. Tom supported that. What he went through, is not, to me, the kind of thing that you'd want to wish on your worst enemy. The stuff that he endured in that climate in Washington, D.C. as the head of Amtrak. Can you imagine going to an AAR board meeting and here he's there and you have all these freight railroad CEOs all around him? How do you think that went? Right? It's,
I would have no way of knowing. I can tell you anecdotally, we always heard when that level of information trickled down, we always heard that the president of Amtrak was never treated with any degree of high respect or courtesy at an Association of American Railroads meeting.
No. Well, shoot, governors didn't want to hear the president of Amtrak call, right? What are you going to ask for? Money. That's the last thing they want to hear, right? That's the only reason they're going to typically call, help us support these trains. Amtrak's a lightning rod for criticism. It's just an absolute lightning rod. And I don't know that that'll ever change. It's just the nature of the business. So I have the highest regard for Tom Downs. I think he took a big risk hiring me for Intercity. I wasn't of the political class at all. And I was basically a rabble rouser. I created grief for him in the things that we did. So total respect.
Thank you. Sir, what have I failed to ask you or left out of your story? Any final thoughts you want us to know for the historical record?
Oh, that's hard to say, because even though we've talked a lot here, over these sessions, I'm not even giving you a Cliff's Notes version of what was all going on. So it's hard to say. I guess I'd flip it back to you and say, if you're satisfied, that we've covered everything, that's fine. You said that you were gonna open up for possibly a fourth session with questions coming from
I'm quite sure we'll
your
have
viewers.
questions. Yes.
So that's, I think, a way to, to leave this at. If anybody who has viewed this has any questions about any of these areas we've talked about or anything that we haven't talked about, I'd be happy to talk about that. And that gives you more time, Griff, too, to think about any other questions you might have. Well, I'll flip it back to you.
Sir, you are such a remarkable and accomplished individual, and so gracious to lend your time and expertise to this podcast. And I hope you will consider this the compliment that I mean it to be. I had no idea that after our time together was over, I was going to say these words. In fact, if I had been asked or put overthought into it, I probably would have said, well, that's probably not going to happen. For many, many years, I have said, if you're a passenger on today's Amtrak Texas Eagle, and for whatever reason, pleasure, recreation, or as Amtrak agent Merle Hogue said, just the workhorse train of going to see Aunt Mary down at Temple.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what your reason, you better thank Mayor Audrey Carroll of Marshall and Mayor Celia Boswell of Mineola and Joyce Smith of Amtrak. Those are the people whose shoulders you are standing upon.
Amen.
And may I add to that, there is now a fourth person that we need to thank, and that is Mark S. Kane, who behind the scenes, you see, you have told us, as Paul Harvey proverbially said, the rest of the story. I had no idea that you were open and receptive to how do we do this and how do we get it, because if you had not been, if Amtrak had, if Mr. Downs or yourself had said, I don't care if they give us a loan or don't, we're not putting any energy into that, we're just going to let chips fall where they may, guess what would have happened? There'd be no rail passenger service between St. Louis and Dallas today.
Yeah,
so,
it would have been tough. Yeah,
sir,
or
you have
to say no to the loan.
Or to say no to the loan. You, sir, have earned your place in my version of the high cotton, as we say in the South, the high cotton ranks of Audrey Carroll, Celia Boswell, Joyce Smith, and now Mark Kane. You are indeed a part of the Texas Eagle legacy. And thank you, sir, for allowing me to be able to finish my railroad career working on the route of the Texas Eagle. I'm very grateful.
Well, see, and I'll just deflect it back to all of you because I worked for all of you. If you hadn't, my job was to help make all you successful. If I could help make all you successful, then that made my life much easier. So I give the credit to all of you.
What a great place to end. What do you say?
The Texas Eagle way. The way to and from and all points beyond. www.texaseagle.com. Y'all come on the way. The Texas Eagle way. Through the heart of the nation, a traveling sensation. Get your reservation today.